Hi, I'm David Wofsy. I'm a professor of medicine at the University of California in San Francisco. Several years ago, the Pew Charitable Trust funded an institute on medicine as a profession at Columbia University to look into, among other things, the relationship between the medical profession and the pharmaceutical industry. 3 years ago, that group published a paper in JAMA on the relationship between academic medical institutions and the pharmaceutical industry that had a substantial impact on the way academic centers set policy for their relations with industry. And as a follow-up to that paper, a separate group, the group that I was a part of, was convened to discuss the relationships between professional medical associations and the pharmaceutical industry. Well, the key element of the paper is straightforward. The paper says that professional medical associations should set as a goal no financial support from the pharmaceutical industry, except for that support that the associations derive from clearly labeled advertising, such as advertising in journals or advertising in display rooms at meetings. But beyond that, the goal should be no financial dependence on the pharmaceutical industry. Recognizing that that's not a goal that can be achieved overnight without substantial disruption and pain in many professional associations, the paper said that as an interim goal, PMAs should strive to be below 25% in the amount of their budget that comes from industry support. That was the main recommendation, and then there were additional recommendations about how to deal with financial support during this interim period. The central one was that all funds from industry should be contributed to a truly unrestricted pool and should be merged and not designated for specific programs, but rather be there solely to support the agenda of the organization. That was one. Two, all committees that set guidelines, that set standards for the profession, should be completely free of industry support for the guidelines or industry support for the people who were on the guidelines committees. And the third major recommendation were strict conflict of interest guidelines for officers of professional medical associations. The doctors who sit on panels that write guidelines for practice should have no conflict with industry, no funds for being on a lecture series, no research support from industry, literally no financial ties to industry. It's often argued within the professional societies that if you eliminate all of those people, you eliminate the experts who are best qualified to write guidelines. We simply don't agree with that. We think there are a lot of ways to get input from people. So if you have a guidelines committee with nobody who is receiving funds from the pharmaceutical industry, it's perfectly appropriate for that guideline committee to write a draft, to post it on the website, to solicit comment widely from within the profession. That comment can come from anybody, and including the experts who do have ties from industry. Frankly, it can come directly from industry if they have an opinion on the guidelines. But that opinion will then be looked at by professionals who are skilled in this area and who don't have ties to industry, and if they're compelled to believe that what they hear from the community should alter what they've written, that's fine. So we're not trying to exclude the broadest possible input into the development of guidelines, but ultimately the decisions about how those guidelines are written should be in the hands of people who have no financial ties to industry. Yes, when we described no dependence on industry except for advertising in journals and advertising in well-identified display rooms, that's what we meant. Nothing beyond that. No promotional materials. No branded items. No gift bags. Our view was that advertising is a part of American life, and people understand it as long as it's well identified as advertising. The exhibit hall at a meeting is an area that's optional. People don't have to go there, and if they go there, they know they're getting advertising. So we felt we would not move into that arena. So advertising in the exhibit hall was acceptable as long as one doesn't have to go through the exhibit hall to get to any of the educational activities at the meeting. And that's, of course, already a guideline that organizations have to adhere to. The professional medical associations should have no role in satellite symposia. Satellite symposia are, first and foremost, marketing activities. There's certainly an educational component, but they wouldn't be happening if there wasn't a marketing agenda as well. And so there's no role for professional medical associations in participating in marketing activities of the pharmaceutical industry. That means the professional medical organization should not derive money for allowing those symposia to take place. They should not allow that symposia to take place during their meeting. Now, the reality is that the professional medical associations can't tell the pharmaceutical industry when to put on programs or where to put them on. And if they want to put them on at a hotel during the meeting time, there's no way they can be stopped. But they can be sanctioned, and we recommended sanctions so that the Professional Medical Association would in every way possible discourage the pharmaceutical industry from setting up satellite symposia in conflict with the meeting and at the same time as the meeting, to take advantage of the fact that the PMA was bringing together all of the people in that field. It's not difficult to do. It's done by many organizations. For example, sanctions can include where your space is on the exhibit floor. It's very important to pharmaceutical industry where their space is on the exhibit floor, how much space they get, whether they get space at all. All of those are sanctions that the Professional Medical Association can use to try to ensure that there aren't satellite symposia conflicting with their own educational activities. We believe that the societies shouldn't sell their lists for the purpose of marketing. So our recommendations apply to the research foundations that are associated with professional medical associations. That is to say, the target is zero funds from industry. During the period of time that we are saying people should set interim goals on their way to zero, and one goal would be 25% reduction, we also, as I indicated before, said that the funds from industry should be in an unrestricted pool, not designated for a specific research project, not linked to any particular research agenda, so that during this period where there still is industry support through the professional medical associations for research, it would be truly unrestricted. But ultimately, the goal is zero. And very recently, since our paper was published, the Institute on Medicine came out with a very similar report calling attention to this. Congress has been interested in this area. So the last thing I would want to do is imply that we're sort of an isolated group. We're not. We're part of a flow of history, and it's pretty clear where that flow of history is going. There was a time in my career where hospital gift shops sold cigarettes. We knew it was wrong. We knew it wouldn't happen forever, but the time wasn't right to change. The gift shops and the hospitals were dependent on the income they got from the cigarettes, and it took a while, but you could see it coming. Ultimately, people were able to dissociate from that source of revenue and still function. Well, we're in the same situation here, and while I don't mean to imply that the pharmaceutical industry and the tobacco industry are the same, the principle that you can dissociate from a revenue source over the course of time, and that you should dissociate from a revenue source over time, is not new. This is happening. Our report is part of it. It will influence the discussion that takes place in professional medical associations. It will combine with the things that are coming out of the Institute of Medicine and out of Congress, little by little, to separate the medical profession from the pharmaceutical industry.